Today we're talking about pricing. Again, because pricing is important, and it is one of the number one topics that we get when we ask our students, what would you like us to talk about? So I'm going to deliver on that promise. Now, pricing is important because as much as we love to write, we love to get paid to write even more. And the more we can charge, the better it is for us. It also gives us confidence. It means we can choose the clients we want to work with. It means we can turn down the ones we don't. And it just means for a lovelier life all round if you can charge what you're worth and what you think you can deliver. So I'm going to share with you what I call the Copywriter Rate Card. And I've written this document. It's quite an extensive document, and I'd like you to treat it as a companion piece to this video. So I'm not going to go through it word for word because it's quite a dense document, but I just want you to have it ready, open, print it out so you can follow along, so that when you do read it, and I do recommend you read it because it's really quite comprehensive as to how you should think about your pricing. It means you've got this companion piece with me here explaining it. So it's a bit of a how-to guide as we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Now you probably go, whoa, Bernadette, what's with the text? So much text. It flaunts all the rules of presentation skills, the 10-second rule and the 36-point font rule, etc. And yes, it does. This is not the presentation. It's just the document that you now have in front of you. I want to take you through it, just sort of heading by heading, so you understand where I'm going with this. So first up, I want you to know that you could charge a client or present a quote to a client for X, and they approve it. And you could present the same quote for the same kind of work to another client and they say no. What's going on? The reality is that it's the way you do it, the way you package it, and also what the client can afford and their need for it. So every situation will be different. And so just know that just because this person says no, it doesn't mean the next person will say no to that price point. So don't be deterred or despondent that pricing that you're giving out is not being accepted. If it happens consistently, by all means look at it, but also try to get the most that you can. In a few videos in the Copy Club, I've already touched on how you can increase your hourly rate so that you get more jobs across the line. So first up, I want to talk about how should you charge? Well, there's a couple of ways. Firstly, by the word, by the hour, or by the project. By the word's not a bad idea for some projects. It's kind of standard in journalism, but in journalism, you might write a 1,500 feature article and it's taken weeks to research that, and all you get is $1,500. I mean, it's a really, really bad rate of return for all that work and that gorgeous craft that you've demonstrated. So that's why so many journalists do come to copywriting, because they go, you mean I can get paid, $5,000 for something equivalent? Potentially, so all I mean is that the work required for a really robust piece of journalism is quite low, I think, compared to what you can get in copywriting. So with billboards, for example, you wouldn't want to be charging by the word because it's 4 words. That's not a good rate of return. You think about the Just Do It people, or, Toyota, oh, what a feeling, some of the best taglines in history. By the word is not a good rate of return. However, when you've got a blog, for example, and blogs are reasonably easy to write, and I say that with a little bit of trepidation because what's easy for one is not easy for another. But in terms of it's not fixed, it's not a digital ad that has to get a massive result. It's just a piece of content that's educational and entertaining in general. So the blogs may be 500 to 1,000 words. So right there, you've got a nice word count that's nice and sort of nuggety, that's worth your effort. And by the way, I always think you should charge for blogs in packs, or emailers in packs of 5 to 10. So let's say it's 1,000 words. And by the way, Google's loving us right now because Google's wanting high volume content, high word count content, because it believes that those kinds of pieces are generally useful, answer a whole bunch of questions, and Google's all about answering good questions. So it's favoring us as copywriters, whereas a couple of years ago, blogs were about 300 to 500 words. That was kind of the standard. So now this sort of push to a higher word count is really good. So if a client does ask you, what should the average word count for a blog? You could say quite genuinely and authoritatively, 750 to 1,000 words is about right for now. Not to mention, it's really good for SEO because you can incorporate a lot of keywords into that, and it helps you get found. So blogs, by all means, $1 a word is 1,000 words, $1,000 for a blog. Now, when I say feature story about that journalist, that would have taken them weeks of research and 5 interviews with sources and all kinds of, extra work. This is a blog you can knock out in a couple of hours at home. Okay, so it's not a bad gig. The next thing to consider is by the hour. I've talked about this extensively in other videos in the Copy Club, so I won't labor the point here other than to say I don't recommend that for a couple of reasons. One, it really narrows what you can achieve in a day. 8 hours by 100 is 800. Now, by most standards, that's a good daily rate. But what I'm saying is that if you want to grow and you want to be exponential and you want to have a lot of free time and not work as much as you have been, then you don't necessarily want to do it by the hour, because what might take you, an hour, you can only charge for that, so to speak, whereas you might just do things more quickly and you want to be able to pay for your expertise and your fast rate of working. So hourly rates are not cool. The only time I talk about hourly rates is when you work out your costing for yourself. Like, what would $800 a day be an appropriate value for your effort? And if so, then you know that $100 an hour, for example, is okay. So when you do quote for a project and you think it takes 8 hours, then it's $800. That's how you get to the project fee. That's your goal, is get to a project fee. The hourly rate helps you get there. Now, whether you achieve that project in an hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours is up to you. That would be ideal. But there'll be jobs when it takes 16 hours and you've only charged for 8. So there's all these swings around about, so you have to consider. There is no award rate or industry standard for copywriting, even though I'm giving you some numbers here for you to hang on to, because I know people do like to be told what is appropriate. So I've given that to you, but at the same time, just know that I've had students in my courses leave the course after not even completing it. They've just sort of done module 2 with 3 more modules to go, and they're out there charging $250 an hour off the bat, or thousands of dollars for a major project. And other students who maybe are incredibly talented but don't have that sense of confidence or salespersonship, and they really struggle to get paid or find the work. So it's not about talent. I guess that's really what I want to say. Yes, you've got to at some level be able to deliver, but at least get the job and then see if you can deliver, rather than not give yourself the opportunity to even get the job. So we're talking about, I'm just moving through the document here so that you can follow it when you've got it open for yourself. I've got some basic hourly rates there. 40 to 55 is low, 55 to 100 is about standard, 100 to 250 is at the upper echelon. But that's not to say you can't charge higher. And by the way, this is only for you to gauge your own hourly rate, so you can work out what your package fee or your project fee might be. Now, I'm going to move on to the project. So that's number 3. This is when it's a fixed price. And I actually like this idea. And in fact, there's probably another type of payment arrangement, which is retainers, but we'll cover that in another session. But by the project is the ideal way to go, where you say, okay, it's a 20-page brochure. It's X number of, words per page, or approximately this is the design that we're working to. This is what I would charge, one figure. Okay, and then the client, yes or no, approves that. I'll talk in a moment just a little bit how you can break up that figure into different categories or line items so it doesn't seem such a big hit to the client all at once. A lot of students ask me, should they work for free to get experience and confidence? So now up to this section here. And my answer is yes. You think about teachers, social workers, nurses, actors, musicians. Lots of people in a passionate occupation often work for free to start with, to get that work experience, that internship, and it's invaluable. I remember my first job. I was in San Francisco and I was at the hairdresser and I was getting my hair done, just walking off the street, and the guy who owns the salon had created this new shampoo line. And he'd showing it to me, and he showed me the back of the bottle and there was nothing on it. And he said, I need to write that, the copy for the back of the bottle. And I said, oh, I could write that for you. He goes, really? I go, yeah. I didn't really know if I could or not. I hadn't done it before. But I thought, let's have a go. So I did. And he gave me a free haircut and lots of free product. And it was great, a great experience. And it kind of got me into the world of copy. And I remember thinking, that was fun. I got to work with a hairdresser, got to look at the product. You had a word count. It was really quite specific. And I just remember thinking, this is a cool job. Yeah, this is a really interesting occupation. So that's when I started to, think how I can work for Contra. So I actually worked for Contra for a lot in the early days. Another job I did was personal training in the early days, when personal training was new. And I took on a client and I wrote their brochures for them, and they gave me a free personal trainer. So that was nice. Yeah, I've done, travel. I've been to some really exotic locations because I wrote the copy for the resort. So there's some nice ideas that you can do. One was Kangaroo Island that I remember. It's a beautiful home on the cliff, and the owner of the property wanted me to write their copy and all their emailers. So I took my pay in, the accommodation. So it was great. Brought my family, and we're sitting there drinking champagne, overlooking the sunset on Kangaroo Island in South Australia. I thought, thank you, copywriting. This is a really cool gig. Now, I didn't get paid cash, but I was cool because I thought I wanted to go to this place for a long time. So for me, it was a nice quid pro quo. Not to mention, if you're doing contra, which by the way is just the exchange of services for, you write copy for accommodation, they give you free accommodation, is you can actually charge a bit extra, like a 20% premium, because you're not getting cash. So it's just a little way of, I guess, being paid a premium for, you don't get to do with the cash what you might normally do. You get given this thing that you may or may not want. So how much time should you spend on a copywriting job? Well, it depends on how much time you have and what you really want to get out of it. So for example, when I started in copywriting, I didn't even count the hours. I wasn't that interested in counting hours because I just wanted it to be good. And in the early days, you don't know what's good because you haven't done it. So you just have to write a lot, and then you have to edit and just hope that it's good. And that's what really the Copy Club is for, is to help people communicate and connect and get feedback from others as well. So that's sort of a sideline. But in the early days, you won't know how long to take. All I can suggest is that you keep a track of your time for a start, but also understand that at some point you have to make a decision. Say, I've spent enough time on this. I now need to just commit and finish and send. And even as I speak, just to the right of me, there's a sign on my wall saying publish and be damned. And I keep that there because I have to be remembered to just send. I can tinker, I can, get really obsessed with the detail, and it's not about making it better. It's just for some reason, I just don't want to send it. I don't want to, obviously have that rejection or whatever might be on the other end. So you're kind of holding on to it. That's for the wrong reason. So I just recommend that you at some point say, enough, it's done. It's good enough. Okay. We're not out for perfection. And the reality is it's probably going to be better than whatever that client could do because they haven't done training like you have. They're not interested the way you are, and they're not passionate about it. They're accountants, or they're bakers, or they're yoga instructors, or they're, chefs. They're doing their thing. Copy's not their thing. So just know that I can't tell you how long you should spend on something, but if you know, for example, you've costed it at $800 and you've got $100 as an hourly rate, after 8 hours, you think, I should really be, tidying this up. Maybe after 10 hours, you say, it has to be tidied up. Maybe after 15, you go, done, finish, enough. Maybe that's when you get someone to look at it and say, am I on the right track? Help get them to edit it for you so that you can get some distance from it. And by the way, 24-hour rest test. Do not send copy that you've just written to the client. Even if you think it's Shakespearean, do not do that. It's the worst thing you can do because you don't have the distance from it that you really need. So I recommend that you just let it sit at least 24 hours, read it the next day, and you'll get a better idea of how you're tracking. So working for free is good. Ideally, you'll pick people that you like working for, that you like the product, you like the industry, you feel that you might be focusing on that in the future so that you've got, a vested interest in keeping it going. So how you can maximize your earnings as a copywriter? Well, write what you know. If you're a snowboarder, write for snowboarding. If you love fashion, write for fashion. If you love films, write for film. There's an industry behind everything. So no matter what you like, there will be an industry attached to it. And I recommend you look at the association for the industry. There's an association for everything, an association for osteopaths, an association for medical practitioners, an association for plumbers, an association for builders, an association for jewelers. You name it, there's an association. So go and look up the association for ... And generally they'll have a website. You can blog for them potentially. They often take free content. Won't pay you, put that way, because they're on a string, very oily. Wow, I'm really mixing my metaphors there. They work on the smell of an oily rag, and they don't have a lot of funds to pay copywriters. So they often use their members to create the content. But what you get from it is the opportunity to get your work in front of your target audience. So it's definitely a good one to work for free. And I definitely work for free with associations when it comes to writing copy. As I said, track your time. just in the early days. I don't track my time so much now. I've got a reasonable idea. I don't use apps. I never have, but a lot of people do like them. What I was saying earlier about put in as much time as you can or you want, because at the end of the day, it's you becoming a better writer. So rather than resent how much time you're putting in, you say, wow, I spent 20 hours on that. Yeah, I won't do that next time, but I've become better because of the 20 hours. And if you look at that old 10,000 hour to be a professional, that concept of if you want to be an amazing bike rider or musician or, actor or singer, you've got to put in 10,000 hours of practice. And I guess copywriting is no different. 10,000 hours, when you're up to your 10,000 hours, then you can maybe start to pull back a bit. That might be a little while away. But everything you've done in the past actually leads to where you are today. So one of my students is an arts publicist, and she's been working in the arts and, directors of marketing directors of festivals and the Sydney Film Festival and all sorts of really high profile gigs. And what she didn't realize is she's been running copy the whole way. She just didn't realize it. She didn't call it copy. Program notes and event invitations and emails and posters and goodness knows what. Now she's thinking, I am a copywriter and I've got all these, 10, 20 years experience. So there's my 10,000 hours. So you might have your 10,000 hours up before you even know it. So often the client, well, one of the temptations I see with my students is they want a discount before they've even started. They say, look, buy this and get 20% off. And I'm not against discounting, but what I suggest with services in particular, because it's not like you can, if I'm selling a book and I add one extra, it's incremental cost in terms of what that package might be. But copywriting, you actually have to do the work, so it's not incremental at all. So what you can think about is adding value. So rather than just knocking 20%, I'll say, I'll do you an extra blog. I'll do you some extra title tags. I will come up with 5 different headlines for that blog. There's lots of ways you can add value that in a way you're kind of already doing, because when you're writing your blog, you're coming up with 5 headlines, you think, which one will I pick? Rather than dismissing them all except one, take them all and give them to the client and say, which one would you like? Extra value right there. So it's actually making your job of writing copy much easier. I live near an airport. Have you noticed? A little bit of a plane flying over. Number 4 is get paid to do tasks you have to do anyway in order to do the job properly. So, for example, savvy copywriters will get paid for chatting to clients, for creative briefing time, to do a website audit, for graphic design and web development, even if you don't do it as a service. So it's all in the way you frame the conversation. A nice way to get paid for the briefing is to have a discovery call or a a coaching call is another way of calling it. And maybe it's like a 45-minute chat and you can charge for that. It can be $97, $297, $497, whatever you feel. And in that call, what you're promising them is some recommendations, just verbal recommendations. I don't recommend written because that will take a whole bunch of time, which you don't want to do. You really just want to use that time to get the information from the client, understand what they're trying to achieve, get paid for your time, get a better understanding of what copy you can create for them and what that will cost them. And at the end, you can give them some really strong recommendations as well as part of the fee. So that's kind of an easy way to get paid for your briefings, because briefings can be quite time consuming. And you do not want to have a briefing before you've even confirmed the job. So the briefing could take up to an hour more. And I don't suggest you don't have any briefing. Like I talked about a mini briefing in another video session. And a mini briefing on the phone is quite handy because you're doing a quick brief about who you're targeting, what are you selling, how important is this to you, what's the outcome. And in those 15 minutes, you can get a sense of what you should charge, right? So then you can confirm the job goes ahead or not pretty quickly. But what I'm talking about now is the bigger brief, okay, that they maybe don't know what they want. They don't know what kind of copy is required. They don't know their target markets. And this is an opportunity for them to be given the benefit of your advice in a professional setting. Okay, how should you format your quote so it gets approved more quickly? So we're up to this little bit here. And one thing I can tell you is that do not just have one line, especially if it's a large figure, 10,000 plus. Under that, you can get away with just a few dot points as to what you're doing. But I think anything bigger than that, you really do need to amplify the service that you're offering and really give it a little bit of flesh on the bone so that when they get it, they don't get that sticker shock, that bill shock, and go, oh my God, $20,000 for what? One brochure. Is that it? And I learned this very viscerally in my advertising days when I was working with BHP, and I've documented this story here, but I was kind of green, and we did this big project, and as you can see in the copy, it was 36 pages. It was 4-color. It was BHP. I remember it very clearly. And I've said there was 9,600,000. I don't think it was that much, but it was a lot. And it was dual paid. Well, now, everything was like me, us, nothing about the client in terms of what they need in order to understand the job more effectively. So I gave this to the client, and my boss pulled me aside afterwards, or maybe even before I sent it to the client, I can't recall. He said, Benny, we don't send it like that. We need to kind of bump it up a little, about what we do, or else they don't appreciate the effort that goes into it. And it's true. We have to educate our clients as to what we do and how much work it is, the thought that goes behind it, the effort and the consideration, and the talent and the years of experience of knowing what word to pick, one word versus another. That's what we do. So he pulled me aside and said, we want to bump that up a little bit, just flesh it out. And I said, great. So I learned a really good lesson then. So here's a few ideas on how you can bump up your quote so it sounds a lot more impressive and it reflects truly the work that you're doing. And not being shystery about this. This is actually what we do. It's just sometimes it's lumped into one word, copywriting, but there's a whole subset of activities required to get to the copywriting. So things like concept development, creative development, competitive research, and so on and so forth. It's all there for you to take a look. So I'll go into the next point, and then we'll take a break and we'll go back to part 2 on the video. I often get asked, should I take work from clients I don't like or respect? Now, there's two ideas there. One is I don't like. Now, only you can be the judge of how you want to work. And if you're at the point where you've got some flexibility and freedom, you may not choose to work with people you don't like. If, on the other hand, you are struggling, mortgage is not being paid, the kids are skinny, car tire wheels are a bit thin, you might want to consider just suspending your ego to think, what, I need to like everybody I work with and actually just do the work. And I'll say this too, sometimes the clients we don't like teach us the most. Now, I can say that from a position of not having to work with clients I don't like anymore, so I feel fortunate on that, but I know I've spent a long time working with people I haven't necessarily liked, and I've learned a lot from them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to work with people you don't like, because it might teach you something, it might help you step up a little, and you have to work out, why don't you like them? Is it because they hold you to a higher standard? Is it that they're really demanding, that they have attention to detail, that they stick to their deadlines, they push you? Why is it that you don't like them? So that might be worth thinking about from your own perspective and personal development as to why you're resisting that particular job. That's not to say people can't be absolute tossers and really unpleasant and rude and all that. And I'm not suggesting you should ever work for anyone like that, but only you can make your decisions as to who you work with and who you don't. So that's about liking. Another one is respect, and that's kind of, I guess, conjoined with liking. But if you don't respect someone, look, we all have to work with people we don't respect. That if they're paying our bills, well, can we suspend the fear of whatever that is in order to get paid to do the work? We don't have to respect everyone we work for. The last one is about more ethics, about Philip Morris, cigarettes, the casino, coal, a political party. Only you can decide whether you want to work for those organizations or not. And again, sometimes the reality of your life dictates that you have to suspend your ethical considerations to be paid. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was an actor, fabulous actor. He's an older man. He had an amazing career when he was younger. But as he got older, he didn't save any money. And he was really kind of struggling as a 60-plus-year-old actor out of work. And he got offered a job with Monsanto, the big chemical fertilizing company. Highly difficult situation for him because he was such a greenie, lefty, activist kind of guy. And here he was confronted with this opportunity to make a lot of money quickly just by fronting the TV commercial for this company. And he took it. And I know he regretted it later because he just felt he'd sold out. But his situation at that time was really dire. And he needed to take the money and he took it. So only you can decide your personal circumstances. For me, I've had some opportunities to work with Philip Morris, and I heard them out. I thought, well, what is the job? I just need to understand fully what it is before just completely rejecting it out of hand. And when I thought about it, it was executive coaching of their executive team. And I just thought about it after I put the phone down, and I just thought, you know what, my father passed away from lung cancer. How can I possibly help these executives do their job better to sell more cigarettes? I just can't do that, So that was an easy decision for me. And you will make your own decision as well. What's danger money? I'm jumping around a little bit here, but danger money is when you charge extra for clients that you don't like, don't respect, or you find ethically objectionable. Okay, no judgments here, right? At all. You need to do what you need to do, but you might just charge a premium if you know that they're going to be demanding. I've written books, and some of the clients I've worked with are very high profile, highly successful people, and they're used to doing things their own way, and they want instant results, and they want people to jump when the phone rings. If you do work with those kinds of people, then charge accordingly, so that when they do ring you at 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, you take the call, because that's the expectation. So by all means, do what you need to do to get paid and not resent it. That's all I'm talking about. And we're up to, should I take out professional indemnity insurance? And I will cut it there, and I'll come into part 2, because I want to talk more about that idea in just a minute and cover the rest of the content in the Copywriters Rate Card. See you on the other side.